So hang on. Hello. I think we're good now. Firstly, can you hear me? If you can't, that whole intro was very, very quiet. So apologies. Oh dear, the new setup. Okay, you can hear us. Well, I had a beautiful intro, guys. I was talking about the weather. I was talking about what we're going to be doing today. You can only imagine what I was saying. I'll do a condensed version. This is going to look funny as well if you're watching on YouTube. But welcome, everybody. Welcome to Elijah, Eric, Lucas. Good to see you guys. Thank you for bearing with me. Thank you for letting me know you can't hear me. Again, this is what I mean. I've changed my setup quite recently. I changed my PC. Lots has changed. And what was that? Was that a good 3 minutes there when I monologued into the void? But anyway, welcome to the Hot Wall, everybody. The very professional stream here where we review football shirts, the latest football shirts, put them in a giant tier list. As I said at the at my kind of intro too. Good to see some familiar faces. Lucas says, working from home today means I finally get to tune into a live stream for the first time in ages. Yeah, it's been a while, Lucas, but it's great to have you here on the live stream. What have I missed for the eBay pickups? Yesterday, picked up a really fun shirt from a kind of casual team in the States called Paradise SC. Got a really kind of jazzy shirt. Won the auction on that one. There were some other good auctions, but that one is arriving. You can see a Werder Bremen shirt behind me. That one was a recent eBay purchase. I think was it 1 or 2 eBay streams ago. So there's been little pickups, nothing major. But yeah, eBay's been fun. I have said in the past few streams as well, guys. Please let me know, one, if I'm on mute, but two, how loud my voice is. If it's a bit too loud or a bit too quiet, please let me know. Similarly with the music, I'm still figuring these things out, getting the levels right. I'm not sure if I'm 100% happy with the levels, but I'd love to hear. Again, the live feedback is really crucial. Brock, good to see you, Brock. So yeah, guys, we're going to focus today on Nike shirts. Nike's shirts for the women's international teams. There's a lot I want to talk about. My first impressions really were that actually these shirts, there was a lot to like. Yes, there are some filler kits. There's some kits which are very forgettable, which really in many ways you don't have much to say about. But there are really good decisions. And I think even though they're not as flashy as the Adidas kits, there's less of an obvious theme. I think there are actually some shirts. There are actually some shirts which I think are better than the Adidas shirts, broadly speaking, at least to personal taste. So we'll dive into all of that. We're going to start the stream looking just for those Nike shirts, and then if we've got time in the stream, which I think we will, we'll then move on to some other shirts that have been released, put them on the wall, etc. Here is the Hot Wall. Now, many of you know how this works, but for the benefit of those who are new, we quite simply are ranking shirts. Well, every shirt that comes out as we go through. There's a few, I've been trying to backdate it, and there's a few gaps I still need to fill out, but essentially my favourite shirts are on the right. Sorry if I do pause to cough. I'm feeling much better than Tuesday. If anyone who was there for the eBay stream, I was muted quite a bit as I was coughing. But anyway, yeah, favourite shirts on the left, least favourite favourite shirts on the right, least favourite on the left. But new to this year, we're also kind of giving a bit of a temperature gauge on the brands. So essentially every time we rank a shirt, I'll also be considering the brand and moving them up and down. And this is just to help us give an idea. For example, I mean, brands like Marathon, they haven't had many shirts released, but I really like what they have released. And conversely, people like Adidas, of course, they have so many teams that it's going to be harder for them to be up this list. But on a quick glance, I'd be able to confidently say I'm liking more of what Nike are doing compared to Adidas. Of course, this will change over the year. And there's some own brands as well in there who will obviously just have one team. Lucas on the eBay pickup says, nice, always like an obscure pickup. Yeah, honestly, I'm all for that as well, man. Especially when you can get like stuff which you wouldn't usually buy, but if you get it really cheap. Oh, that Paradise shirt was like £16. Usually their shirts are a lot more, and they're not a pro team, but it was it was cool to see. Right, this is what we're doing today, guys. This is Nike's collection of shirts. What's really cool actually on this is their own site, their press release site. we can also get a look at the leisure wear collection. We're not going to rank these, but there's some really nice items, and often, stuff in here is better than the match shirts, of course. Look at that Nigeria jacket, wild. But we're going to rank the shirts, the home and away. We'll go through each of them individually. Obviously, we'll talk a bit about just generally what Nike are doing in the collection. But let's start with Australia. I think I did. Yeah, no, we're good. Right, let's start with Australia. So, Australia, I think with the home shirt, there's a couple of layers here I want to talk about. The pattern itself, it honestly feels quite generic, and I think because Australia have had some really interesting home shirts, and they've played off the kind of the 90s. I can never remember the year, but the 90s kind of speckled paint stroke design, whatever you want to call it, which they've referenced a couple of times. I think this one honestly feels a bit of throwaway. Now, on one level, I like the fact that they've got a bit of a pattern. It helps with a plain shirt to have some sort of pattern, and it's a nice level of contrast. It's not too overbearing, but I think where this one falls down, if we compare it to something like Brazil, and I'm jumping ahead here, but if we look at Brazil, the Spew, thank you, Elijah. Yeah, that is one of the nicknames of it. You see, for example, with Brazil, this has a bespoke dry fit ADV, which is the player spec material mapping pattern. And that is really nice. And that actually, I think, adds so much to the shirt. Whereas the Australian one just has the default one. Now, that's, I'm being picky, but I would prefer this sort of approach. Now, this does have more of a pattern. So in that sense, it's kind of more dynamic, at least at first glance. But actually, I think Brazil's, at least from the body perspective, is much stronger. I'm being very picky here. Like, this is the kind of thing I do. And the jacket, you see the pattern there. Honestly, I think it, again, it's not a huge negative, but it's just something where if we're being picky, I think there are better shirts. Now the crest, and again, this is going to be a big feature, which we'll talk about on all of the shirts. Some of them really lean heavy. Well, all of them are made with what Nike are calling Nike Grind, which is just basically their recycled material, which they use. And they've used on a number of products for many years now, but they haven't used them for crests until now. So it's the first set of Nike shirts with Nike Grind. I did a very short thread on Twitter, which you can check out. This looks cooler than the guys. Look at this. And this is the thing, when you get recycled plastic and you use it in certain ways like this, and you get the kind of randomness element and the little specks of color, and honestly, it adds so much. And, we could talk a lot about crests, plastic crests versus embroidered, etc. I'm interested to see the durability of these, but from a pure visual perspective, I honestly think it adds so much, and I really like how it's just on the green. The yellow appears to be just plain, so that doesn't get too messed up with the kind of randomness of it. So overall, I mean, it's the same with the swoosh as well, guys. You can notice it there. So I think these, I believe that's only for the player spec. I don't think the replicas will have that, although I might be wrong. I haven't actually checked that. I should have checked that, really. If anyone knows, let me know. But anyway, so we'll start with the home. And honestly, I think, despite my kind of like my thoughts on how it could maybe be a bit stronger, I do actually think this is still an inclusion in the hot tier. In the flames tier, sorry, not the hot tier. It's the hot wall. We'll prep the away there, although the arm is covering it a bit there, but that's fine. So Australia home, I like it in the flames tier, and honestly, it could be much, much higher. I think, again, the pattern honestly feels a bit of a throwaway, but the crest is really strong, and I do think, again, this was one of the shirts which kind of typifies where Nike are putting a lot of their emphasis on the applications. The pattern is what it is, but I do really like that in the flames tier. Of course, we will be moving Nike around a bit today, so let's pump them up slightly. And then we come to the away, and this is a funny one because it's a different situation with this one. It doesn't have the swirls, but honestly, I actually think I like this more. I think the colorway is really fresh. It's not something which I expected from Nike, but it's a really nice colourway. It's a great contrast to the home. I really think this kind of combination of the kind of turquoise light blue with the very soft yellow and that kind of slightly, I mean, it looks iridescent on this. It's not iridescent, but it, you know, has a kind of slightly purple hue to the blue. We'll have to wait and see the actual shots of the kit, you know, the retail pictures, etc. But and the funny thing is, it's got the same, I believe, I might be wrong, but I believe it's the same dry fit ADV pattern mapping, whatever you want to call it. But I actually think it works good on the base. And you've got the other kind of thing, which a few of the kits have, is this kind of little Total 90 nod, particularly the kind of version 1 Total 90, so 2002, as opposed to the kind of Mark II version, which was 2004. But I'm getting into the granular details there. So I actually like the away more. It doesn't have the pattern, but I actually think of all the colorways, and this is one thing which Nike, there's some really nice color choices. Yes, the patterns are much less exciting in the most part compared to Adidas, but I do think from a color perspective they did nail it, and if anything I think they maybe even eclipsed Adidas in some ways. So it's perhaps a surprise, but it's it's a sneaky inclusion right up here. Like, I'd be happy to put it kind of mid Flames tier, and there's not much. Well, I'm gonna go here. I like it alongside Minnesota there. And yeah, I mean that combination. So we've got obviously the Australia home and away, both excellent, both really good. And you've got light with the home, you've got the cool crest. So I like it. Really strong from Australia. I like this the Nike grind on that because sorry, but it's a sewn on crest. Also, they have Nike grind on the jot tag. Yes, they do. You can see that. Although having said that, on this picture, this looks more like a stitch thing that's got. I don't know if that is Nike grind, but I might be wrong. That might just be that because I won't get too bogged down in that. Brazil, we talked a bit about them already, and of course, if we quickly hop over here, it's worth noting that this doesn't appear to have. Well, it could be recycled, but the lack of any of the kind of speckled colours gives the impression that it is just a more standard plastic crest. It could simply be that the process is different, but regardless, it has less of a kind of feature compared to Australia, where the design, the speckles add so much interest, and I actually really like that. But you know, that's not a major thing. Where the Brazil kit does jump over Australia is in the area of the body, and we talked about this already. The fact that you've got a bespoke pattern in the dry fit ATV, ventilation mapping. Again, I don't know what they would use as that term actually, but it looks really cool, and I think it adds a lot. The shirt without that would be quite disappointing, but to see that there is a real plus, and it does honestly give this one, like for me, I would probably, not by much, but I would probably take it over Australia. I think this is a very, very strong shirt. Honestly, I get very excited when I see stuff like this. It shouldn't really be, you know, it should be more common than it is really, you know, because it is, you know, these are biggest teams in the world, one of Nike's biggest teams, and this of course is their player spec shirts. The replicas will almost certainly just be plain, or they might have the pattern, I don't know. But anyway, long and short, I think this is another easy inclusion in the Flames tier, and this is you know, I think we're going to see more good than bad. There are some forgettable shirts, but I think if you have to look closely with these shirts sometimes. But stuff like this with Brazil, and you do really see it nicely on that close-up picture. That adds so much quality to a shirt, and yes, it does look plain, but I think in hand these shirts will look very good. I'm expecting these shirts to really win people over when they, or some of them anyway, when you see them up close. Not all of them will be as strong, but I think I'm already convinced, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of these more. So Brazil home, we'll come to the away very shortly. Brazil home, I think, you know, I'm not going to get carried away, but I do think it's in the Flames tier, and I will nudge it ahead of Australia. If Australia's there, I don't see why this shouldn't be here. which is pretty good going. There aren't going to be many shirts that are essentially just plain, but the pattern is achieved through the material. I mean, if anything, I think that is the way forward. I expect more brands to be kind of going down that route. There are real kind of challenges for brands around cost, and that's why I wouldn't expect anyone other than the big boys to actually get involved with jacquards, that is patterns within the material, or even if it's embossed patterns. There's different ways you can achieve it, but it looks good. And then when we come to the away, we've not talked about that yet. I think this one goes down a bit for a couple of reasons. I'm not sure the cut on the shirt here, on the paneling, because it has to break up this leaf pattern, which I assume is the same kind of pattern as the body of the home. It looks it honestly loses a bit of quality there. I'm not even sure necessarily about the collar choice, although it is the same as the home. But I think, you've got the default pattern, which is fine, but it just kind of what made the home shirt so strong is lost on this one. And even though I quite like the colorway, it's definitely a less strong shirt. And I think actually this is probably, again, particularly with the cut of the shirt, and it's very hard to do this, but if you had the pattern kind of bleeding over into the chest a bit, or just feeling a bit more kind of in place as opposed to being so abruptly cut off, I think this one would have had potential in the flames tier. As it is, I think this is going to be the first one today which goes down into the candle tier, probably still higher up in the candle tier. It is definitely, it's just certainly I would say an above average shirt, but it's not much above average. I mean, there's a nice gap here. It feels about right there. And we'll just, again, Nike can be moving all over the place today. We'll nudge them down a couple of notches, but overall, a good couple of kits for Brazil. It's still a strong 1-2 punch. The home is definitely where it's at, though, I think. And Brazil have had some good shirts for the men's and women's team. They're in a good spot. Brock says, I like to tweet about 99% to see them as plain shirts, whereas we see them as nice with fabric technology badge details. How I feel, send me down the USA shirts, but I love the crest and other details. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I'm going to obsess over minute details. Most people won't notice the difference, and we shouldn't be. It used to wind me up a lot more when people would say, "Oh, that's just a plain Brazil shirt." But honestly, for the majority of people, it might as well be a plain Brazil shirt. Certainly from this distance here, there's nothing about that which is interesting. Australia, you don't, from this, again, we're looking at just small photos here, but then you look at the crest, and I think some people will be convinced. A lot of people won't even care. They think it looks a bit gimmicky. But yeah, I mean, Canada here, honestly, this design feels a few years too late for me. And in fact, if I, not RMA, I've got the wrong language on there. We're not going to go to them. We're going to look, I want to say if it was Canada, or maybe it was Toronto. Okay, no, it was Canada. So this one, honestly, was quite disappointing for me. Canada's shirt in 2020 had this approach, and this honestly looks like it almost looks like the same design. I mean, it might be the same design, and to be honest, now I'm actually looking at it, I'm sort of more concerned than I was before. So I was gonna say this one looks like they've basically done it again. It really does look like they've done it again, to the point now. Okay, if it is the same design, and again, I'm actually. It's funny because before I was going to say it looks very much reminiscent of the shirt, and now I'm thinking it's not the same. You can see the I say it's not the same. I don't think it's the same, but it's very similar. It's derivative, isn't it? It might as well be the same shirt. It reminded me of that, and now looking at it, it's almost anyway. Let me know if there's more pictures of this one. There aren't many on here. Even if let's say it is different. And again, I'm now seeing double here, but regardless, you could say it's better. I mean, Elijah said it's upgraded, so I think that's fair. The kind of different shades. There's a bit more contrast. I think that is a bit better, but it still feels. I think had we not seen the 2020 shirt, there would be more to be excited about. As it is, it's not too crazy. Maybe if the pattern was reflected in the dry for AUV pattern again, like we said with Australia, I'd be more excited. So this one, I think it has to go in the candle tier, which is funny because it is quite a bold design in and of itself. But we've seen it before. I mean, if anything, actually, now looking at it, given how similar it is, I'm quite comfortable putting this one a bit further down. It really does feel like they've basically gone back to the same drawing board from just 3 years ago. You know, if it's been like 10 years, ideally about 20 years since the design, it could have been a bit, you know, there's a bit of a kind of throwback narrative you could have if the team wanted to do that. But it's going to go there. There's a big gap. And I do think, again, I'm going to trim that side. Pardon me. I do think they're much stronger shirts in Nike's collection that they dropped. But yeah, not big on that one. And it really does feel like, again, honestly, the more I look at this, I'm actually going to go out and do some more comparisons. It is so similar. But yeah, a bit disappointed. The away, one of the plainer shirts, obviously, you know, it's got that kind of subtle Total 99, which is nice. And just looking at the crest, it is worth noting you can see a bit of the Nike grind there, which looks good, and that's a very subtle amount. And yes, it's got a bit of the randomness, a speck of green in this particular version, but that honestly, it's a small thing, but I don't think that's a bad thing at all. So the way is very simple. Is it too simple? I think in this example, there's nothing to say about the colours. And this is an example, we talk a lot on the channel about how with a simple design like this, it really needs details to lift it. A jock tag, maybe some sort of back neck detail, something on the cuffs. So this is an example where it's so plain. Now, is it Ice Cube tier? I think this one could go in the Ice Cube tier. I do actually like, you know, the little Total 90 nod. For someone who's a bit of a Total 90 fan, like myself, I don't mind that, and it's a nice little call out for those that are kind of in the know. But there's nothing exciting. I actually think there's some worse shirts in the collection, and I think there have been worse shirts this year. You know, I like it more than Napoli, certainly. I mean, looking at this, honestly, I think you could even have an argument for it to go in the counter tier. We'll stick it down there. And you can see there's a lot of variance. Like, again, maybe, I don't know what you guys think, but I actually do think with Nike's kits, the highs are very high, and there's some ones which I like even more, but the lows are quite low. And this one, you know, there's nothing I can see anyway to get me excited. Even though the crest is a nice application, I assume that'll be the same in the away. But yeah, that's Canada. Let's come to China, one of the more disappointing collections, it must be said. Boxes are the authentic place you all dry fit ADV, and replica is just dry fit. Does stadium jersey mean replica? Yes, so the usual terminology is stadium is replica, authentic is player spec or player issue, but there's so much, it can be confusing. But yeah, usually for Nike, certainly stadium means replica. On pitch, you sometimes see, which is player spec. I've been trying to use player spec more this year because I think, rightly so, people have mentioned that player issue is a confusing term, given that the shirts aren't issued to players. It can often be the same specification, which is why people might say it's player spec. Also, I think authentic isn't a great term because it implies that replicas aren't authentic, which I don't think is helpful. It's a minefield. It always has been since I've been talking about shirts. But yeah, that's hopefully helpful. And yeah, I think a lot of the teams, they're only selling replicas currently, and some of them aren't even selling their replicas yet. I think England, for example, I'm pretty sure aren't available yet. So there's a few quirks there. Ian says, since the 94 and 96 Umber kits, Brazil says you don't seem to have changed their home kits. In many ways, Ian, that's fair. And I think for a team like Brazil, they're a bit like a Boca Juniors or an Ajax for me, where you know what you're going to get with a home shirt. And I think, honestly, you look to things like embossed details, subtle details like in the cuffs, the shades of colour, all those things can help. And I think in this example, this is a really, really strong Brazil shirt for the embossed pattern. Take that away and it is average. I would say almost on the strength of that pattern alone, it's a good Brazil shirt. And I actually like that they keep it so similar. I think that's, you know, again, like I mentioned Boca Juniors, a Boca Juniors home shirt has a formula, and you're not going to deviate from that, even though you create a new one every year, and there's all to be said about that. Anyway, coming to China. Now, I said it was disappointing. It is worth mentioning that you do have, I believe, and again, it's hard sometimes to tell, but I believe there is actually, I don't think it's the Dry Fit ADV pattern necessarily, or maybe it is, but there is a subliminal pattern with some elements. And I don't know what this symbol is, the Zhan Gyun. I've not pronounced that correctly. So you can see here, a kind of cloud pattern. So you can see that, and that is good. Now, I don't think it's a bit less defined than the Brazil kit, and I don't get as excited by this one, but it is there, and that does really help, because again, were that not there, you know, it's like the Canada situation, which just has the default pattern. So there is something, and again, it's more than, like, this is one thing about the Nike skits. So many people, yes, it's plain, but there is at least something here. And honestly, I actually think we're in this era. I've mentioned it before. I've called it the post-Nigeria era, where since Nigeria's 2018 kit, there's been an arms race to try and get the craziest pattern, the most daring pattern. I think Adidas's kits are a good example of that, done well. Like, I think, you know, they've got a theme, the landscape thing, they ran with it, and they look great. The shirts look really good, but I don't think there's a problem to go for plainer kits if you develop on your materials. And I think Nike Grind is a good development, which you see on some of the crests. I don't think it's on this example actually, but you know, Australia, and we'll come to some others. And there are some other improvements. The shorts, the fit of the shorts has been improved for female players, so that's really good. But yeah, honestly, patterns like this can add a lot. Now, I think it's a little bit too subtle, and I think it's because, and again, I'm not 100% on this, but it looks to me like you've got the default Dry Fit ADV pattern. I say default, so the kind of template, the base style for Dry Fit ADV ventilation, or the kind of pattern in the material, overlaid with the detail, the symbol. I need to see the shirt in person and compare it to see for sure. But anyway, that's a lot of words to say that I do think this is actually pretty good. It's not in the flames tier, but I think this is kind of mid to high candle, and I'm quite comfortable putting it in and around that kind of area, maybe somewhere like here. I think it's better than people give it credit for. It's better than certainly it appeared at first glance when I saw it. And this is kind of an ongoing theme for Nike shirts. Now, the away, the yellow, that is much like Canada. It is just the plain style. I do think the colorway, at least, you know, that on its by itself, I prefer. It's slightly more interesting. The yellow and red compared to the Canadian white and red, but it is like, again, bar anything that I've missed, it is essentially the same design, the same template. And I think there are a few kits like this. You know, we can't escape that, and I think we shouldn't ignore the fact that it feels like there was a lot of effort put into some of the shirts and very little into others. Now, it isn't as simple as that. And I'm a big believer in trying to look past just maybe the obvious and think, okay, maybe the attention is elsewhere. But there are kits like this, like China's away. There's just very little. You know, where are the details? If you're gonna, and again, I would have to redo my rankings if we do see some backnet details and jock tag details inside. You know, something inside the crest maybe. That stuff could be great. And if we had, let's say, a backnet detail, something inside the crest. Maybe a little bit on the cuffs, and some of them do have cuff patterns, then it can easily be closer to the flames tier. Without them, it goes down there. That's my methodology. That's my thinking. As we go through, guys, and again, particularly if you're new here, please do jump in. You're very welcome to disagree. I love hearing what people think as we go through. So yeah, please do that. Right, England. Look at the swoosh. I love the Nike Grind, man. The Nike Grind material looks excellent. Just on the crest as well. This is absolutely brilliant. This is, again, I mentioned this in my threads on Twitter. I really think this adds, not only does it add something from a visual perspective, but if it's more sustainable, that's just an easy win for everyone involved. And I really like how you have the contrast of the slightly random speckled, completely multicolored, even partly white base with the crispness of the lines in the blue and the roses in the red. It's an excellent execution. I'd like to see it maybe a bit more raised, and again there's questions over the durability of Nike Grand, but in short, great crest execution. If we start with the home, obviously, if you compare it to something like Canada, the crest is so much more interesting on this example, and there's not too much to say. I do like the nod, again, to the total idea, and I quite like the shade of blue. It's kind of a more of a true blue, as a kind of accent colour. So I think the crest does carry this one. I really like the execution there, and there is nostalgia there, but it's not. Honestly, this one is one of the ones where, again, nothing special in the base. I can't see. There might be something on the cuffs. It might just be the lighting. So I think this is it's certainly solid, but it's nothing. It's not going to change the flame steer. But it's one of those things where I do think people say it's just a plain white shirt. That's fair. I think in this example it is largely plain, but the applications do look really good, and I do think again, that's fine. I would love to see more details though. I think when you go for a plain shirt, and of course England usually have plain shirts, so that's nothing new, but you need extras to really lift it. So it's going to go, middle of the canal tier. I do like it. It's one I would look out for if it makes it to the sales. The away, of course, was much more talked about, and rightly so. The pattern is really cool, and I think it's got the nostalgic element, the light blue, memories of other England shirts, which looks really good. I don't get as excited about the pattern as I think I do on some of the others. It's very nice and it has that nostalgic feel, but I think looking at it again, honestly, I wonder if it's the color combination. I feel like I should enjoy the light blue with the true blue a bit more, because I kind of like the tonal look, but I don't know, maybe I'd like to see some different secondary colors there, and I just think I don't know, something about the pattern doesn't feel quite kind of complete to me. Maybe I'd like it to be a bit grainier. I think this is one of a few shirts where the dry fit ADV mapping kind of doesn't add anything, or at least in this example, it conflicts a bit more obviously. Like, again, I don't want to get too bogged down in this, but on the plain shirt, a pattern like that is welcome, even if it is just the default one. On a heavily patterned shirt, it kind of, like, on some pictures, it doesn't really. I don't think it's adding anything. If anything, it's kind of clashing a bit. I'd probably still rather have it than not, but it's one of those where I don't think I'm too excited about that one. By the combination, I mean, of the pattern and the driver ADV. But is it a hot shirt? I think you could argue it is. I would actually put it below Australia's. Well, no, that's the thing, right? When I compare it, I think I do actually prefer the pattern in isolation compared to Australia's. No, I think it does compare well. Even though, again, with the dry fit ADV, this one sort of fits in a bit more. I mean, I'm kind of splitting hairs here. I would put it around there. It feels very similar. Equally strong crest. So no, that feels good. And I think I'd like to see this one in person. That could easily be one that rises up a bit more. I like it as well. I do like it as well. It's worth saying actually, and I didn't say this already. We haven't got Adidas shirts on here because that is something which I need to backdate. And you know what? Thinking about it, if we've got time, why don't we do them after Nike shirts? I should have probably planned to do that already. But looking at it again, it seems wrong to be ranking these shirts and not have the Adidas shirts. So let's do that. Let's rank Adidas shirts because we could do it. We're only 40 minutes into the stream. We'll do that. Nike versus Adidas. I could have built that up into a big thing, but there we go. Nothing like changes on the fly. Ian also says, I actually like it when signatures are exactly the same as the first shirts, but with minor and major colours transposed. Looks great within whole colour sporters. That's true. I mean, that is a kind of lost art, isn't it? you know, in this example, having sorry, I forgot to mute myself. Having the two different collar styles, it in some ways it does feel a bit odd. And there is something to be said about that, Ian. I hear you for sure. Brock, USA are coming up. They'll probably be the last one on this page. Yes, they will be coming. Right, France. Now this is one of the examples with a cuff pattern, and this is actually the case for both home and away, which is really cool. Quick shot of the crest again. Really interesting to see the different approaches to Nike grind. In this example, it's actually much more muted color wise, but I really like it. I really like that approach. One thing which again is a bit of a step back, the cockerel there looks less defined or less kind of raised, but I'm being very picky. Overall, the applications look excellent on these shirts. So home and away, I think starting with the home, which I believe is the blue one. Yep, it's the blue one here. An interesting color combo, reminiscent of the England shirt with the light blue, albeit a different shade. I'm not too sure how I feel about this one. I think, you know, certainly the dry fit in these shots, the dry fit ADV pattern really kind of is brought out in this particular colorway. But I'm not too sure. I think the interaction or the kind of combination with the cuffs, the very kind of patriotic flag cuffs, and the more simple blue, dark blue, navy, total 90 detail, we'll call it. I'm not sure. I don't think cuff details or kind of neck details have to match with cuffs, but I think there's an argument to be said for maybe having a more similar approach. I like getting the flag detail in here, but maybe that could have been on the side of the shirt, and then you could go for the navy cuffs. That could be something I'd like to see. Or of course, could you get the flag in there somehow? That could be a bit too tricky. But there's something which feels a bit imbalanced there, and I do like the shirt as a whole. But despite having the kind of the interest of the cuffs, the flag cuffs give it something of a talking point, and I do like the idea. But I'm not too sure. I'm not sure about this one. I think this one, I mean, I still think it's decent. I would still put it very much. You know, I think it compares well to England's one, but then I think it's not much better. I'd probably put it above England, but not by much. I think this is still in the candle tier for me. Yeah, and I think with the England away, you can see the colour difference there, slightly lighter blue. That one honestly, I think, despite not having interesting cuffs, I think the pattern works well. And obviously this one doesn't have a pattern. I don't think the combination of that combination of the T90 detail and the cuffs, something could have. I like to see some different versions of this one, basically. Jake says, yesterday I met a man from Oklahoma on the train through Lancashire. We chatted and asked about Tulsa FC. Haven't seen their new shirt. Sorry. Oh dear. It's in the shirt. And again. I apologise, guys. On last week's Hot Wall, he wasn't a big soccer fan, but turned out he worked for Williams. Their shirt sponsor, talking about the interesting history of Tulsa. Shares how football shirts can help spark some great chats. What a great story, Jay. That's really cool, man. That is really cool. And I think like you say there, it's amazing how football shirts can so easily be a catalyst for a further conversation. Like it does. I see it all the time when I mention to people what I do for a living. Even if they're not into football, they'll have something they can say about shirts, and there's always a conversation to be had, which is really, really cool. But thanks for sharing that, Jake. Very nice. And Elijah, I just seen your message. I got Japan one last week. Very good. We will talk about Adidas soon. So with the away, it's a similar story in that the cuffs. I do like that you've got some element in the cuffs. It adds something there. But it honestly feels a bit misplaced. It feels like it's kind of come from another shirt. You know, you've got the red in there, and there's no other red in the shirt. Not even in the Nike grind. So the cuffs, it's interesting, and there is a pattern in the body, but like some of the other shirts we've talked about, there doesn't appear to be any bespoke dry fit ADV mapping, although it might be just in the shots we can't see it. It looks to me like the default one with the pattern overlaid, and the pattern is kind of a bit kind of dazzle camo-y, kind of brush strokes I think we're seeing here. I mean, I haven't actually been reading most of these blurbs. Orphism, I don't know what orphism is. Let's have a quick Google. Okay, so it's kind of how would you describe it? Cubist influenced. Yeah, okay, I can say that. Yeah, it's fine, but I think it feels like a couple of ideas on the shirt here. I don't mind the lack of a collar, but I think what, for example, and I know France have done this on other shirts, but now you've got the red there. Why not add a little bit of red into the body to help tie that together, or indeed in the applications? I think the pattern feels a bit throwaway. Honestly, I've already got the France one there. Honestly, I think there are better shirts here. Now, I think this one compares interestingly to England's home. I would take it over it, but again, not by it much. I think people would probably assume that because it's got more bespoke features that it would be much higher. But I don't necessarily, in this example, and I think, I take it with the away as well, but I think it has to stay for me in the counter tier. And again, I wouldn't take it much above England, despite England's being very plain and France having details. But I don't actually think the finished package, at least in the shots we're seeing here, it's not really. I don't think I'd put it in the flames tier, basically. But interested to hear your thoughts, guys. Let's come to Korea. Now, these shirts aren't particularly interesting, but there are elements which I like. And from a colour perspective, I do appreciate both shirts. So on the home, I think this is I might be wrong, but I don't think any of the other Nike shirts have the side panel blocked out in this way. And that gives the home, which obviously uses the colours of the flag, it gives it a nice pop. And that looks good. And that, and it's, I think where I would like to see more, I mentioned about you're not needing bespoke patterns or elements to make a good shirt. But this one again, because it, working off of the sides, it's very, very simple. I do like the crest application, which you can see that on the away. It looks like the home's the same. Sorry, the white's the away, isn't it? Sorry. So on the home, you can see it there. I assume the white's the same. So that is a nice, and this kind of color blocking and using a base template and using colors within that template. Essentially, that is the design, isn't it? Or the key feature of the shirt, and that looks good. It looks strong. And to be honest, when I look at this one, I think I would actually even take it over the France shirt, the white France shirt, despite the France one having more kind of going on. And it's funny, when I cut this out, we won't even see the red and the blue, but that's okay. So I actually think this one, personally, I would probably take higher. Would I put it in the flames tier? I don't think I would. I think this one is high, like kind of very top of the counter tier. But I do like that approach. Honestly, again, it's lacking details, and the cuffs, I mean, they are very simple. But I don't mind plain shirts if they do have a few nice touches, and this one does have some nice touches, I would say. But if anything, I think the home, I think I like it even more. And yes, it's very simple, but the combination of red and pink I think looks really strong. I like that introduction, that kind of surprising choice of pink. But that, it's funny because what it immediately reminded me of, and it's the same with Nigeria, more so with Nigeria, but it brought me back to the 2002 World Cup. And South Korea had that very kind of peachy, pinky shade of red which they used on the home shirt. Now, it wasn't as pink as this, but I quite like the combination. It feels like a bit of a nod to that. It's a surprising choice with the red. I think it's just the right level of difference. If it had been it could easily have just blended in. But I actually think the color combo alone, honestly, is enough for me to actually sneak this one into the flames tier. I really do think that, again, just from a color perspective. You know, usually you'd see white. We've seen blue as well, paired with the red over the years for South Korea. But I'm happy to put this one in the Flames tier. Despite being plain, yeah, again, all the caveats which we've spoken about, we'd want more details. And I do think, again, you know, we started pretty strong. And I think we're kind of like, there are some which I like a lot more. But we're sort of bringing the average down ever so slightly. But I think this one, yeah, I'd be happy to put it alongside the Charlotte shirt there. Nike are very much kind of, again, there's so many shirts and it is a bit of everything. It's good and bad. But I do actually think this one is one which I really like. And helping to tip it into the Flames tier is the crest. Love that. Love the randomness. And I do think it's a really, really strong usage of more sustainable materials. Boxers, did you see how Tulsa Athletic beat FC Tulsa last night in the US Open Cup? Big upset. Basically, semi-pro 4th division beating the fully professional 2nd division. Or semi-pro 2nd division. Huh. That is an upset. Great stuff. Well played to Tulsa Athletic. Right, guys, there's more. There's loads more. Let's keep going. We've got the Netherlands now. This one a bit like the France shirt, where the colour, I don't know what it is exactly. I don't know if it's because the dry fit ADV pattern is darker against the lighter base. I think that's what it is. But you really sort of see the pattern very clearly as opposed to some of the other colourways. I quite like the lighter shade, honestly. You know, in this example, you get the pattern in all its glory, and I do quite like this new one. It is a bit all over the place, kind of reminiscent in part of the first Vaporknit pattern, which was the kind of thumbprint aesthetic. It kind of got nods to that almost, but it feels like a kind of a clash, a combination of different previous Nike player spec mappings, which is cool. But this crest, wonderful, perhaps my favourite of the collection. I just really like how in the Nike Grind material you've got kind of a colorway in and of itself with the kind of beige or kind of off-white. I don't know exactly what color that is. Maybe it's yellow, whatever it is, with the navy, a little bit of kind of pinky purples in there on the black base. Looks great. I would like the lioness to be a bit raised, but I'm being picky. So I like that crest a lot. And it's interesting that they've recolored it completely for the away. You don't see that often on the international scene. But yeah, so the home, I think, despite not having a bespoke pattern, nothing on the cuffs or anything like that. And it's interesting to note that the T90 details are in orange as opposed to black, which you might expect. And obviously in 2002, it was black. They then went to white, didn't they, for the secondary colour in 2004. But yeah, I like this one. I think actually, you know, if we just take it and then quickly compare to, I'm trying to get, just get the crest in there, get the badge in. Let's compare it to the other ones. I mean, do I like it more than Korea's? I think it's around that level. I think it feels like to me a step above the France shirts, for example, England shirt. Even though, again, we're not necessarily seeing anything new in terms of pattern, but just the overall impact. I think there's something to be. It's interesting with the France one. Yeah, how prominent that dry fit ADV pattern is. But yeah, I like it. I like it here. I like it in the Flames tier. And again, we'll just nudge Nike one spot up. And then the away. I'm trying to get this a bit of a reflection on my screen here. I think this one, so it's fun to see the recolored crest. That is kind of a notable change, but I'm not sure. I get it's funny. The red, obviously, which is on the outline of the crest, is on the cuffs, but I'm not entirely sure about that. And I do think the pattern feels quite kind of stock, even though I believe it is bespoke for the team, at least for this collection. I'm not convinced by it. It's kind of got the brushstroke aesthetic. I do think as well, like, again, having the crest be recolored. Honestly, that's not that common. There's a spider on my wall there. I'm gonna just quickly dispose of that. 1 second. we go. I would say I humanely disposed of it, but that would be a lie. He's now in my bin. But anyway, where was I? Netherlands away. It's funny, right? So I think compared to England's pattern, even though it wasn't quite kind of reaching the top tier for me, I liked it. I like it a bit more than this one. However, when I compare it to, say, France's away, the white one, I do like this one a bit more. I don't mind the kind of darker blues for the Netherlands. I think as an away colour, I think it's one of the stronger ones I've had over the years. So yeah, I think I'd probably take over the home, only slightly. Let's stick them there. There's a nice gap, and there's a cluster here which I think are really solid. Really, they're above average. Nothing. I mean, that's the thing. It's worth noting. Nothing in the Volcano tier. I don't think we've had a real standout shirt as of yet. As we've seen. Will we get one as we finish? Find out. New Zealand. I'm quite biased here because I am half Kiwi. I do really like these kits. I must say this is one of my favourite combos. Start with the home. Now, on one level, sorry, I say the home. Now, I thought, at least with the men's team, the white is the home. I thought that was the same with the women's team. Now I'm doubting myself. Certainly on here, it lists this is the away and this is the home. So if it is the other way around, or like, the same as the rugby team, yeah. Again, I was pretty sure it was still white home, but I might be wrong. Maybe they've changed it. Maybe this is wrong. We'll call the black the home because that's what the press release says. Anyone who watches more women's football than me may be able to help me there. So apologies there. But anyway, we'll start with the black shirt. On one hand, you could feel it's a bit an obvious take, a bit like Australia going down the kind of swirl pattern. Of course, they're playing on the fern, but I do really think this kind of style of pattern works really well. It's got the kind of graininess to it. It's a bit kind of grungy, but for me, it was one of the standout shirts of the whole collection. Just, I think the aesthetics of the pattern. I think there's some interesting ones here, and but something like France, I don't really see what that's doing. England's is good, but it's a bit more. I think I like the slightly more jumbled combination here. You get a better look at it on the jackets there. It's nothing unique, and it is quite obvious. They're playing on the fern, as with pretty much any of the patterned Kiwi kits does. But I think there was the picture there which I really liked. You kind of see it from a different angle. There's Hannah Wilkinson there, and I think it's good. Like I think you've got the kind of the various shades of the blacks and the greys. I think this is an example where the pattern worked with the dry fit ADV mapping. I think because it is kind of a bit busy enough, as opposed to some of the more crisp patterns. So something like Canada's here. This, because of the sharp lines, I don't think it looks as good. Now, I don't know if that's just me, but this one, the overall effect, like to me, and again, I hope I'm not being too biased here. I think this is actually, like, personally, and again, I have to look at this one. I'm going to put it in the Volcanoes here. Now, I wasn't sure if I would, but the more I look at this one, I really do think this is, I mean, put it this way, it would be on my wish list anyway, or at least kind of one I'm looking out for because it's for New Zealand. But, when I compare it to like we looked at some of the kind of American shirts here, like Miami, Chicago, Red Stars, I like this more. I think this compares well. Like when I look at this, it's funny. It reminds me, obviously, a bit of the Sapporo shirt, which is currently my favourite shirt of the year. Now, that one I think is a bit better and a bit more interesting. But I would happen, like this one, I don't think looks out of place for my personal rankings anyway in the Volcano tier. So there we go. Maybe that's the bias showing, but the more I look at it, I mean, oh no, I've got a 404 Nike. Don't do this to me. There we go. Oh, I mean, someone's messing around on their site there. You hate to see it. I think we're back now. Could have just been my internet, I don't know. But anyway, the one thing which, you know, and again, it's not as exciting. It's not as exciting seeing the Nike grind is a bit more subtle, and I think it's almost, I'd like a bit of color there, and of course it's not raised, but I just think this is for me is a beautiful shirt. I love the pattern going on the sleeves there, and it kind of blends in, and honestly, I mean, it's funny. Brock saying, big surprise, a key print in the volcano tier. You'll show your rules. Indeed. I mean, I try and be as objective as possible, but I can't hide my love for this one. I think it is really strong. I like how it goes on the shorts as well. Ian, I like this though. He's saying New Zealand Friend Zone makes it look almost tied out. It does look tied out. I think that's the thing. I don't mind that. It's obviously quite a trendy thing. A lot of people are doing it, but I think personally, I think it goes into that direction, but in a really effective way. As a package, as a kind of full kit, I think it looks great. And Brock saying, I was under the impression that the men and women both wear white at home and black away to offset their rugby. Yes, indeed. Sorry. Yeah, the football team, the All Whites, aren't they? Or at least that's certainly a nickname for the men's team. I don't know if it's the same with the women's. But yeah. So who knows? But regardless. And the away, I think, is also really good. Now, again, a bit like with the discussion around the Korea home, I really like the colours here. I really like that shade of kind of teal. I don't know exactly. I mean, they've called it bright futuristic blue. To me, it looks a bit teal, but kind of greeny blue, whatever it is. Kind of steely blue, perhaps. I love it. I love that combination with the white. Now, in this example, it's funny because the cuffs, a bit like with France, I'm not sure. Oh, sorry, wrong way. France. I'm not sure, even though there is something there. I'm not sure if it's actually adding too much. I think I can understand. You know, obviously it looks like is it a black base with the teal ferns, and there is, at least there is black to tie in. Unlike the France one where you didn't have the red. This one feels a bit more in connection, but why not have it on the collar? I think this is an easy one to include on the collar as well, but it's still a hot shirt. Like I actually think it's funny, this one, again, I hope it's not the bias, but it probably is a bit, but hey, I'm not going to apologize. Wrong layer, there we go. I think this one, you know, compares favorably to some of the other ones we've looked at today. You know, when I look at the list here, there's a kind of gap here which I think feels appropriate. I probably would take Australia's one over this. So there we go. I can't be too biased if I'm putting a Kiwi shirt below Australia's. He says. But then I probably would take it over the Australia home. Like I think it's honestly, it's good to see Australia and New Zealand, the host nations, getting two of the best sets of kits, I would argue, for the Women's World Cup. And I really do think the colour choice makes this one for me. Whether it's just black, you know, I think it could easily slide maybe into the camel tier, but I love that shade with the white. The football ferns, thank you, Brook. That does ring a bell. So that's New Zealand, and again, I can't hide the bias. I had to put it in the volcano tier, guys. It's definitely one I'm going to try and buy. I really like it. I think though, and we will do a review show, at least a couple of review shows during the year, where we'll look at it and kind of retrospectively move stuff up and down. And I think that is a prime candidate for when the kind of dust settles. I might bump it down to the Flames tier. But now, when it's still new and fresh and hyped, we'll stick it. I like it. Nigeria. Really interesting combination of kits. The home, many people rightly pointed out the similarity to the 2002 shirt. If we quickly bring that up, I'm going to keep that as a reference point for later. Nigeria, again, keep hitting the wrong shortcuts on the keyboard. Very reminiscent. Like, undoubtedly a reference to that kit. Of course, later shirts like 2018 shirt, the famous 2018 shirt, also borrowed that kind of lighter shade. Interesting combination with the cuffs, which has a pattern which kind of slightly less obviously so, but kind of, reminded me a little bit of some of the patterns we've seen on shirts like the early 90s one, 94 shirt, 94 away. So interesting nods. I think a couple of things with this one. The crest is good as well. I like to see it. I think there are some of them, maybe just because the crest itself is better. It's a pretty forgettable crest. But yeah, is the colour enough with the cuffs? I think it actually does add quite a lot. I do like the going back to that shade, and the cuffs. I think one story with several of the Nike shirts, it feels like the cuffs and the collars. I think it's just basically the current Nike templates aren't really lending themselves to kind of patterns that will. Very few of the collars or the T90 details have any kind of interesting elements. So in that sense, I think compared to the cuffs, which have been getting some interesting patterns, bespoke patterns, I think there's been quite a few other shirts where, despite the interesting cuffs, it kind of feels like it's clashing, or at least not cooperating, shall we say, as well. And I think one thing when you're looking at shirts, guys, it's often worth considering, how do the collar and cuffs interact? Are the patterns the same? If they have a pattern, are they imbalanced like a lot of these Nike shirts? I think it's an interesting element, and something which you don't have to match it, don't get me wrong, but anyway. What I think of the shirt, honestly, I think this one has some legs. Given the colour choice, I think that is key. Having that reference, it's a fun callback. It's very subtle. It's kind of, if they always did lighter green, you'd get bored of it, or it would kind of become, well, it wouldn't be a feature at all. But I personally quite like the lighter shade, and not this kind of green, which wasn't a great shade, but a slightly more vibrant electric green, whatever you want to call it. So this is really good. How does it compare? I feel like, honestly, it's a bit crowded for Nike in this region, but compared to Brazil, I'd put it below Brazil, but I think it's kind of around here. Let's go there. I think I would take every England shirt, not by much, but this is the thing with Nike. They kind of slid back a bit. They're climbing back up our rankings, and the away is a really fun pattern. I don't know a lot about the origins of this one. It's saying it's a forest green. Hang on, this can't be right. The forest green away. I mean, it looks black to me. Maybe it is a very, very dark green. Interesting. We won't dwell on the press release though. Really interesting repeated pattern. They're kind of almost like a Tetris shape. And I like this a lot. It definitely has shades of kind of almost like an iridescent pattern. So it feels kind of quite trendy in that sense. It contrasts the home, I think, really well. So it's really good. Like, it's one of those patterns which I think there's been a few which feel a little bit kind of so an example like the Dutch one there, it feels a bit like we've seen it before, and I like that one a lot, but it's I'm getting a call here. I won't be able to answer that just yet. There we go. Yeah, so I like this one. The pattern feels a bit fresher, a bit more interesting than the Dutch one, and I think the overall effect, I think it complements the home very well. And I'd probably take it over the home. I think this one, in a different sense, feels like it is on the level. I mean, to be honest, look at this here. I actually think I'm going to stick it here. Again, it kind of looks like an iridescent pattern, even though it isn't iridescent. But yeah, I'm very happy to put it at the higher end. Oh, I've just opened Illustrator. Rip my computer's performance now for the next minute as it tries to load. We'll try and close it before it gets there. Yeah, I like it a lot. I mean, this is the thing where Nike have really, I think, produced some nice shirts. And in this example, again, it's not just. I think the pattern going on the sleeves, on the shorts. I presume around the back. I haven't seen a picture of the back of this one, but overall, really, really high on the Nigeria shirts. One of the better collections. Lucas says, Phil, notice not exactly on topic. I ask everyone this question. In your opinion, who finishes high at the table next season? Chelsea, Liverpool. Interesting. I mean, it's not been a vintage season for either club. Trying to think about it objectively, I do think Liverpool can still kind of run with Klopp. I'm maybe foolishly, but I do think he can turn the ship around. The uncertainty around Chelsea's position, despite all the money and the players that they have, I would say Liverpool. But again, I am a fan, so obviously that's not necessarily too helpful. But yeah, Lampard is back at Chelsea just to the end of the year. I'd be very, very surprised. I mean, I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I would put a bet on Lampard not being there next season, no matter what happens. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he goes on an absolute tear and they sign him full time. But I'd be very surprised. You never know. You could have him. Norway, thoroughly disappointing. I mean, even on the press release, the crest isn't even. It's just embroidered, so it's not even Nike grind at all. And there's look at this. This is a completely pointless. There's nothing. It's national. It says it's using. It talks about the interchangeability of the kit and the shorts. Not good enough for a team like Norway, who are actually quite good as well. They're one of the better women's teams, or at least quite a competitive women's team, I believe. Anyway, not even the kind of colour blocking like we saw with Korea. It's really, you can't put this anywhere other than the Ice Cube tier. Quite an appropriate tier for a country like Norway, but very disappointing. I mean, the thing is, like the Canadian shirt. I mean, this one, unlike some of the club kits where they might be in this tier because of the sponsors being really ugly, this is just so minimal. There's nothing I mean, the away, what can we say about that one? The combination, not even asymmetric cuffs or anything. They could have done that. Just anything to give us something to hold on to, and no details from what I can see. Easily, I think with the China shirt, at least you had the pattern as well in the body. I don't think there is anything here. I might be wrong, but just completely, honestly, just a bad set of kits. Perhaps if the template was outstanding and we saw kind of more innovation in the areas of technology and material, but that's the thing, it doesn't even have the Nike grind crest, so it doesn't even have that going for it. That would really help. It doesn't have that, so I'd take this even lower than the home, to be honest. Let's stick it down there in the gap. Bit of a oh no, we just gone the wrong way there. Okay, let's go again. Very disappointed. Very disappointing. And Norway, Nike, obviously they have the pretty crazy away shirt. Sorry, for the men's team. A couple of years ago. It's been very little apart from that. So one of the kind of, just forgettable partnerships in world football. Lucas saying, it's a tough one. I think Liverpool, I'd like to think Liverpool as well, but I also would like to be the Chelsea's. Yes, the Chelsea only comes good. The Spurs fan, nobody to the club. I like hearing everyone's opinion. Yeah, how you feel about Spurs, Lucas? Would be very interested to hear. It's always good to get a fan's perspective. Right, really interesting combo here, because you've got, the very plain Portugal shirt with a very, very kind of busy. I can't remember who it was. Someone mentioned that it was like a climbing wall. I do really like. So let's start with the home. Very underwhelming. I think even the shade of green as well, but just the cut of the shirt. There's so little there. This is easily, I think, as disappointing as the Norways of the world, which have just ranked. So I think this one is quite an easy inclusion. in, if not the counter tier, maybe the very, well, I was gonna say the boss of the counter tier, maybe. I don't think I could do that without anything. I mean, the one thing I wanted to check, no, there's nothing I can see in the drive for ADV pattern. Not great at all. And again, you know, we've talked a bit about kind of what Nike have done well today, so I don't think it's all doom and gloom. But this one is definitely not one I would be looking out for at all. Now the away is a lot of fun. I think for me that shade of green is a really nice choice. It's a bit kind of mintier. And although the swoosh kind of gets a bit lost, I think what really kind of tipped me over the edge of this one, or made me think I like this one a lot, is that they've also got the kind of off-white or the beige kind of flecks, stones, whatever you want to call them. And I like that a lot. That kind of layer, that extra depth. I think if you took that away, it would look a lot less kind of finished for me. And I really like it. Now, I'm not like as high on it as some people. But I think when you compare it to, so for example, we talked about Nigeria's away, England's away. I think it's probably somewhere in between that for me. I think it does have the kind of, it does have, particularly with the colours. Like I think this pattern in other colourways would not be as interesting for me. But I like it. It does help. I think in some ways, I've said before how I quite like when you have the kind of complementary shirts, home and away shirts. At the home, if it's plain, it gives license for a more daring away shirt, I would say. I understand that combination, and I don't mind that combination. Or vice versa. If you get really crazy on a home, why not tone down the away? Of course, a third shirt can be used as well to balance the collection. Presumably, the back is plain. I was saying, yeah, you would guess so. But I'm not certain. That is hard actually, not seeing that. A little bit of Nike grind there. That's good to see. Yeah, so it's a good question actually. And Brock's saying Portugal away reminds me of the new Chicago Fire shirt. Yeah, so I kind of prefer this to the Chicago one. I mean, the Chicago one, where did we rank that? I can't remember now. Where did we rank Chicago? Are they even on the wall? Maybe I missed them. And again, there we go. Yeah, so reminiscent of that for sure. But I think the kind of I think because it's kind of all over the body. Sorry, there's less of a gap, the kind of sponsor gap. And personally, I'm not the biggest fan of kind of vertically aligned kind of crest and brand logos. But overall, I think this one again, I like Nigeria's more. I'd probably even take Australia's one above this Portugal one, but we'll sit them next to their Portuguese-speaking friends in Brazil. Yeah, overall, like again, it's certain like you take this any day over the week over the home. There's so little to write home about there. In the away, it's pretty crazy. Some people will probably have this even higher, but I do think it justifies a place in the Flames tier. Yeah, for me. And Lucas on Spurs saying we are down bad, but that's nothing new. It's at the point where I would sell Kane and restart the project. That'll get in Daniel Levy out somewhere. Yeah, it is. I mean, I've got a few friends who are Spurs fans, and oh, that was a good yawn. Yeah, I honestly do feel your pain. But yeah, I don't think many fans would disagree with you there, Lucas. Right, USA. I think, well, a couple of things here. One of the most interesting elements is that I might be wrong, but so the crest. Oh, is it? I thought it might be a cutout, but actually it is just a recolored one. It still looks really cool. You know, subtle bit of Nike grind there, nothing crazy, but keep it in the colours. Interesting pattern. I think this one. So of all the kind of different patterns we've seen, and we've got everything from. I really like the New Zealand one, of course. That's why it's up there. Other patterns I'm less sold on. Something like the France one, where it was a bit too subtle. Australia's one was good, although not the best feature of the shirt. Brazil, using the embossed details. There's been what I do like is across the collection there's been lots of different styles and lots of different approaches. Even though I don't love the kind of aesthetic of the paint splatter look, I do like how it's been achieved. Like, I do think, having a couple of shades of blue there, and it looks good. It's not to my kind of personal taste. I don't mind the gold, given that am I right in saying, are they the reigning champions, or they've won it quite a few times anyway? Again, apologies, my knowledge of women's football is not what it should be, and I should really be doing my research. No, my key details like that a bit more. What I do like about this one, it's funny, I actually like it. Doesn't appear that we've got kind of defined cuffs, and I actually think that's quite strong. Most of the shirts, not all of them, Portugal as an example, they didn't as well, but a lot of them do have cuffs, and I actually think you don't need to have that. I don't mind that, but I'm left kind of whelmed by the pattern, shall we say. I'm not disappointed by it. It's just not to my taste, basically. So I think it kind of falls into that kind of I don't know. I was going to say kind of a cheap kind of obvious nod to go down the kind of paint splatter. I don't think it's not too cliche, but it's nothing I'd write home about. For me, this is probably in the high canon. Let's say high because I do think this compares favourably well to certainly the England shirt, but it's not. I don't think the pattern's a Flames tier pattern for me anyway. It's not far behind the Dutch shirt there. It's kind of we'll stick it there. And Nike, we'll just bump them there. The away is interesting, but again, it has this kind of. It's not a problem necessarily, but I think in this example, this is one of the starkest examples, where you've got the cuff pattern feels like it's on a different shirt compared to the total 90 detail, and you can see presumably there were limitations where it had to be one colour. I don't know, but having for me, I'd either rather have the cuffs plain red or have the navy, some navy elements, even if it's just a little bit, in the total 90 detail. I think it just doesn't kind of in this example, some of the shirts you can kind of get away with it, and I do like having the red actually there, but again, it just feels like two different kits. I like seeing, again, you got the this is an example a bit like the Dutch home or the France home, where the Giraffe ATV pattern really kind of comes through, and it's not bespoke, but I do like it feels like it has that kind of high tech look, and that's the thing with the player spec shirts. When you've got kind of the latest kind of combinations, specifications, why not shout about it a bit? Why not get it a bit more prominently there? So that, overall, I do actually think that, it's funny, despite some of the criticisms there. I'm trying to get a good. There we go. I think this one you could probably justify it. Well, I'd take it over the home, not by much, but it's going to sneak into the Flames tier, and it could be so much more. I think all the usual provisos of you'd want details, etc. I do think the overall look is good, and I'm happy to put it around here. Nike, we'll button them down one place. Couple of good comments here. Lucas saying, keen on picking up club shirts of the Asian team that won the World Cup. I even picked up an Enzo Benfica kit before he left. No, that's coming to it. However, yes, as a Real fan, that would be a slight issue. But I mean, if you're going to complete that collection, that's a fun little collection, Lucas. I've not seen anyone do that. That would be a good one to do. I would say you can collect a rival team's kit, absolutely, if it means completing a collection like that. Marcus, good to see Marcus saying the goal swoosh makes the winner's badge way better. On the other hand, the away has the opposite effect. Yes, that is a good point actually. I've not seen it with the winners patch, but the gold would help to sell that for sure. And both a lot of people here say USA doesn't have the identity to the shirts. Every time they were so different. What are your thoughts? I disagree. We typically wear white home and blue away. Yeah, that's the combination I'd associate. They compare it to Brazil, always wearing yellow, and always Netherlands always wearing orange. I'm thinking USA usually wears white home. Yeah, that is a weird one, to be honest. Surprised to hear that, but I think certainly with some of the USA kits, you can see they're trying to inject something into the home shirts, trying to make them kind of interesting in some way, and I don't know if they've quite found the formula. Many people kind of talk about going back to the kind of Waldo kit, and I think probably the quickest win for Nike would be to embrace that, not Goa. This is again, keep changing my keyboard language. You know, they've tried with the stripes. I think they could definitely do a better version of this shirt, and I think that'll be popular. And they had the kind of dazzle camo. You know, there's been some interesting shirts. I quite like this third shirt, but that's kind of beside the point. Yeah. So what I would say is I didn't really like the away, partly because of the Nike template. I do think these shirts, certainly the new away, is better in that example. So guys, to be honest, I think what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to wrap it up there, and we'll do Adidas's kits next episode. It's funny because, of course, again, I'll be completely honest, I'd forgotten that I'd not done Adidas's shirts. And timing wise, it's a bit odd to do Nike's first, but unless there's any other big collections between now and a couple of weeks' time when we're scheduled to do the Hot Wall again, we'll do Adidas's shirts. And if we don't do it then, we'll cover it at some point. I will definitely want to do that on stream because I think there's a lot to be said. And of course, now I've got Nike shirts on the board, we can compare with Adidas. But I think it's been for me it's a really interesting collection. There's a lot of shirts which I actually think deserve quite a lot of credit. And yes, you know, I think on reflection, I probably were getting a bit carried away putting New Zealand in the volcano tier, but I'm happy to say it, at least certainly kind of first impressions. It's funny, there's a few black shirts as our top three currently. There's a long way to go in the year, but that probably says a lot about my affinity for black shirts. But overall, they're all starting to take shape. You can see already, and this is one thing which developed quite quickly in last year's Hot Wall, that kind of it starts to get congested in the Canon tier, but not as much as you'd maybe expect. There's a lot of shirts in the Flames tier. I think, you know, generally speaking, I'm excited by a lot of what I'm seeing. Even though these shirts, you know, MLS has contributed quite well, more so than previous years. Again, Nike throwing in quite a number of shirts into the mix. It will be the same when I can tell you now, when Adidas come to the party, they will again. Well, we're going to see some Volcano t-shirts from Adidas shirts. I'll tell you that now. But Nike are no slouches, and I think certainly, particularly with the crest, that has got me quite excited. Elijah's an interesting yet underwhelming. Honestly, that's fair. I do think again there are some diamonds amongst the collection, but you know, I would be lying if I said I didn't want more. There are a number of shirts which are just completely forgettable. Even though they're not necessarily bad, you know, but they're not good. There's nothing of note to talk about for some of them. But there we go. That is the state of the Hot Wall, and we will resume again, all being well. Most likely in 2 weeks. I will confirm the schedule, but the plan will likely be I'll have a look. It'll either be the Hot Wall or eBay next week, and then the following week it'll be either or. I've done both this week to kind of catch up. I will be away actually for most of May, so I'm going to have to change up my schedule there slightly. But anyway, all the details will be on Twitter and YouTube on the community page. But as we finish, guys, any questions, chuck them in the chat. It's been good to hang out with you as always. Thank you to the regular faces. Thank you to those. Maybe you're new, you've been lurking in the backgrounds, but thank you for tuning in on this this Thursday afternoon. I appreciate you guys taking the time. I really enjoy these streams. I enjoy hanging out, and for me, it's been a big kind of part of my. Well, I look forward to it every week, even though we don't have the biggest crowds. There's maybe 10 of us, 15 of us, 20 on a good day. That's all we need. We could have just 2 or 3 of us and we'd have a good time. So thank you for choosing to spend an hour and a bit here at Phil's Corner. But any questions as we finish, chuck them in the chat. If not, I will say goodbye. But Jordan, much love to you too, my friend. Much love to you too. And Lucas, love being back in watching the GOAT. Thank you, Lucas. Thank you, my friend. Have a great day too. Yeah, thanks for hanging out, guys. It's been good. Yeah, I'll speak to you soon, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's here on YouTube. If you're one of my patrons, and I do have a Patreon, which you can check out in the link in the description of the video. Yeah, wherever you're kind of watching or coming across me, we'll speak soon. Thank you, Elijah. Goodbye to you, my friend, and everyone else. Take care, and I will see you very soon.